Is it
No
funny?
way.
Is it funny?
Yeah. It's very funny.
Okay. All right.
Wait,
Tucker, if you're done laughing, sir, I'm gonna get started. All right. Welcome to Pulp Diction. I'm your host, Dylan Gibson. So, welcome back to the Pulp Diction podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Gibson. For the first time, I will not be joined by usual guest host Emma Joe, but I think I still got a pretty special episode today. I'm joined by my brother, Tucker Gibson. Say hi, Tucker.
hello. Hi. Hello,
All
brother.
right. And I am also joined by my father, Jonathan Gibson.
What's up?
Yeah. And Dad, would you like to introduce the film we're talking about today?
Sure. So the film that we are talking about today is Almost Famous,
Mm-hmm.
a
That,
Cameron Crowe venture.
yeah. And this is one of you've told me this is one of your favorite movies. Like you've
Uh,
lost count of the amount of times you've seen it.
yeah, and the number of different like editions of it we have, and um,
Mhm.
we've watched the extended edition, I think, and um, yeah, it's uh, it's a near and dear to my heart movie. So
So what do you think drew you to it to begin with, and what do you think continues to draw you back uh like 24 years after it's come out?
yeah, a couple of things. I mean, I can totally relate to the main character because his mom was somewhat uh, restrictive of his music listening. So
Mhm.
I was in that same boat when I was his age, so I can relate there. And just, I mean, um, I don't know. There's something about Cameron Crowe that, to me, he manages to capture the essence of youth, in whatever decade it seems like his movie is in. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Like the movie takes place in the 70s and it's very like clear about that time setting, but it is almost timeless in a way like that it's just the kind of story that doesn't age in its coming of ageness, I guess.
hmm
It's easily my favorite coming of age story, I think.
yeah. Well, and it's sometimes when you have a cast like Cameron Crowe has in Almost Famous, you somewhat worry because you're like, is this really going to be as good as all the, you put all these great parts together and you wonder if the whole is really going to be as great as all the parts. And in
Right.
this case, I think it is, but
Yeah, absolutely. There are definitely like just so many cast members that do so well in the movie, like great director, great cast. A lot of my favorite characters uh in movies as well, I think like Penny Lane, is Miller his last name?
uh-huh.
I don't yeah, Russell, they're all Lester
Hammond, yeah.
Bangs. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Oh yeah, I
probably
mean,
one of the greatest mentor characters ever.
oh gosh, yeah. Well, I mean, has Philip Seymour Hoffman done bad movies before?
Not as
Yeah,
far as I've seen.
but has Seymour Hoffman ever been a bad character in a movie? I don't think so. I mean, even if he's been in crappy movies, he's still managed to shine, I think.
Yeah, like I thought he was the best part of Mission Impossible 3. That might have been the first thing I saw him in, but like even when I was really young, he just something about him drew me just totally in with his performance. But yeah, Almost Famous, he has in a movie filled with great quotes. he has many of my favorites. Like what is it? The only like real currency in this world is what we share with each other when we're uncool.
Hmm.
I think that one speaks to me. My history teacher has it taped up on his wall.
Nice. And let's face it, William, we're uncool. Right? That's what he says.
Yeah. And like we're all uncool to a degree. I think everyone who watches Almost Famous can see uh at least a little bit of themselves within William to some degree or another.
Oh, well, and he's the one human character
Exactly. Like
that
he's the
walked through
lens
this.
through which we see like this it's almost another world, the whole thing of the whole world of rock and roll, which Penny Lane
Hmm.
makes reference to. Like she talks about the real world, etc., which like William asks like where does this real world begin and end? You know, is there a real world? Is there a fake world? Or is it all just the world?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and he brings in that he's almost like the conscience too,
Hmm.
right? His mom kind of passes that on to him, and he acts as the conscience for everybody, saying that they need to treat their fans better and all this other stuff. So that's an interesting uh, thing to consider.
Yeah, and what stuck out to me on this second watching for me was that uh I don't know if it's because my like the projects I've had to do in film class have tainted my the way I view movies, but like it's basically a perfect hero's journey almost to the degree like something like Star Wars in is, I would say.
Mm,
Because
hmm.
like all the stages are there, like leaving like the ordinary world, crossing the threshold to the special world, which in this case is that of rock and roll.
Hmm.
Uh, Different archetypes like the mentor. You see the gatekeeper who initially rejects William from coming in because he's the enemy. And
Hmm.
like you even have like the return to the ordinary world at the very end with and the resurrection when he mends his relationship with Russell.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I did also feel like as he went into the rock world, there was this almost ethereal quality to it. Ethereal.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um, that's the at least that was the word that kept popping into my mind to describe it. Because like you first see the Band-Aids with Penny Lane and all the other, uh, what were they?
Groupies.
Groupies. That's the word. Thank
Hmm.
you. Like you first, William first sees them. They're far away. They're backlit. There's almost this mystical quality about the way that they're being viewed. Like, uh, I mean, it's otherworldly, is what it is, and
Right.
just I think as William goes in, he sees more of that initial magic of this world. Like Russell, I know I took note Russell was like listed in the hotel under Harry Houdini, like obviously a magician,
Hmm.
and just all sorts of just similar cinematography bits, like the bit with the introduction of the Band-Aids, I thought. But these kind of started to go away over time as he almost became disillusioned with just a quick piece of context here. This is a point in the podcast where my brother officially left the recording session. Okay. These kind of started to go away over time as he became more. Can you hear me?
Hmm.
Okay, my thing's not going green. These almost kind of began to go away over time as he became more disillusioned with the world of rock and roll, kind of,
Hmm.
beginning to question where does this real world start, where does the rock world end, and realizing like it's maturing in a way, and
Yeah.
he is coming of age as he realizes like these aren't gods or the idols that I've looked up to for so long. These are just people.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and the Band-Aids, the groupies kind of act almost in a, if you're talking Shakespeare, sprightly or Homer, sireny, right, kind of thing, because they
Hmm.
all take away his innocence, right, at one point. And I think about that scene and how Crow kind of filmed it too, as there he is on the bed, and they're all like dancing around
Hmm.
him. So yeah, again, just a lot of really wild imagery. So even thinking about what you said about the hero's journey, and even pulling in some somewhat mythology and stuff into it.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Like it's so much about it is just like I don't know, it's perfectly illustrating this journey he goes through personally and like physically,
Hmm.
going into and he initially like thinks, "Oh, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm getting to tour with this band." And all that stuff, but by the end of the movie, like all he really wants is to go home,
Hmm.
which and the thing about that I thought was you kind of get to see that in the normal theatrical cut of the movie, but I felt like the first time I watched it was I believe it's called they would call it the bootleg cut, but it's
They
really
do,
just,
yeah.
extended
Hmm.
director's cut.
Yeah.
And how I felt, and Tucker felt the same way watching it, was that like certain scenes were just given more room to breathe, I
Hmm.
guess. Like character development was a little more, maybe a little more fleshed out. Not that it wasn't in the original, but like I mean, it's just there's just more to it. Like I said, everything's
Right.
given more room to breathe.
Context. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
certain scenes. I was especially surprised by the Penny Lane like dancing scene alone,
Hmm.
which was like maybe a few seconds in the theatrical cut. That I felt like they went for maybe an entire song in the
Okay.
bootleg
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. Just kind of, I don't know, you kind of get to experience it more alongside William
Hmm.
rather than being an observer like I feel like you were in the theatrical cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think I will say I think I liked the extended edition a little bit more, but like I
Hmm.
would still gladly gladly watch one or the other any day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, is this the only Cameron Crowe movie you've watched so far?
It might be. It might be. Yeah, I think it
Because you
is.
haven't seen
Because
Say
I haven't seen
Anything,
Vanilla
right?
Sky say
No
anything. We bought a
Sky,
zoo.
We Bought a Zoo, Aloha, Jerry Maguire. Okay. Yeah, it would be interesting to. I'm very curious to hear your take on it, because again, a lot of those you're talking about the hero's journey. Of course, um, even though I don't know if he directed Fast Times, but
He
that was
wrote
kind
it,
of
right?
what, yeah, that was kind of the his startup when
Hmm.
he kind of went into a high school and undercover, and that's kind of became
And wasn't that
about.
like Almost Famous in that he was like it's like semi-autobiographical?
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, because in real life, I think it was the Allman Brothers, right? That
Hmm.
he
Yeah, I
toured with,
believe so.
which
That's who.
there's a lot of homages in the actual film to the Allman Brothers. I mean, they show that live at the Fillmore album cover and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I'd love to hear like some of what Tucker would have thought about some of the like
there
all
you
the
go.
different references. I don't know where he went.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the way it is semi-autobiographical, like between Fast Times and basically living through Fast Times, basically living through Almost Famous, and now being a movie director, like
Hmm.
Cameron Crowe has had such he's had kind of a wild life, and
Oh yeah. Well, and his wife was, I don't know if they're still married, was Ann Wilson from Heart, the band.
hmm. Oh, huh, that's
So
interesting.
um, yeah, because she did a lot of the music for his movies.
Hmm. But yeah, talking about music, like obviously the music is it's very essential to this movie and it has one of the greatest soundtracks of all time, I feel like. Not just, but I feel not just because it's a playlist of, one good song after another, but also because some of the ways that music is used in the movie are
Hmm.
some of my favorite ways I've seen, some of my favorite uses of music in any movie ever.
Hmm.
Like you got, and especially in the way that characters like, there's kind of almost a theme of them using music to express themselves because there's something about doing that, I feel like sharing a song with somebody else to express a feeling that you can't quite get out within your own words. You got
Hmm.
Zoe Deschanel telling her mom this song explains why I'm leaving, and then playing America by Simon and Garfunkel.
Hmm.
And that kind of continues because I saw this deleted scene on YouTube, um, where William plays Stairway to Heaven for his mom, uh, like with his teacher or something to convince her why it's like a good idea to let him leave. Uh, yeah, I guess it was like a special feature on the DVD, but like they
Okay.
couldn't get the rights to Stairway. So what they
Right.
did was like they had a countdown for you to start playing it on your own record player. But this YouTube
Interesting.
video obviously like just edited Stairway into it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I misspoke. It wasn't Ann Wilson. It was Nancy Wilson that he was.
Mm,
Well, and Tiny, I mean, I never hear Tiny Dancer the same way
never.
anymore. I mean, I think the way that that was shot on the bus, where, I mean, it's not just, I think there's multiple kind of appearances of that song in the film, but the one that to me is the most memorable was when they all break out while they're on the bus, just singing that song.
Easily. That's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. And I think that's another way, like, of course, that these people are expressing themselves through music. Because at that point, the band's going through a pretty rough patch. Like, Russell's just gone partying with a bunch of, like, was it high schoolers,
Yeah.
teenagers?
Yep. Yep.
And he's feeling like crap, and everyone's kind of mad at each other and mad at him. But they start singing to this song, and it's a perfect it's a perfect way to show that like I don't know the healing power of music, I guess.
Well, yeah, you say healing power. I was going to say how music unites us, right?
Hmm.
And the fact that everyone's got their song,
Oh
right? I
yeah.
mean, like some people, I mean, like what you just said before about some people, they can't. The beauty of the artist is to be able to depict, whether in words or music or painting or whatever, to be able to depict things that others aren't quite able to articulate. And so I think here's a perfect example of what happens when somebody else is articulating something that draws everyone together. And it's you talk about ethereal or euphoric even. I mean, God, just look at look at what's happening with Taylor Swift and the Eras tour, right? And I
New
mean,
album came out today.
right, right. So eh, there's this the power of music to draw people together, and whether you see like these big stadium venues like Coldplay or U2 or Taylor Swift or whatever, and they stop playing the music, and all you hear is a whole stadium of people filled with people
Hmm.
singing their songs. Like what? Golly, like
Yeah, and
that's
like
just
people ask like why would I go see a concert when I could just listen to the music on Spotify right here? That's why, because you're with this just this group of people that are all united in their love for this one
mhm.
artist.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that makes me think about the end of the film when they're having kind of that post tour what's it called? Um like meal, right? And
Hmm.
backstage, and Sapphire sits down and she's looking at these new groupies, and she's like, they just don't even get it, and they don't really understand this whole idea of what it's like to love the music, and love the band so much.
Mhm.
And yeah, again, like what is that? What does that do to somebody to draw them in? Like somebody who's going to just put their entire life aside to follow after a band, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that. I mean, sure, people are paying out the nose to see Taylor Swift and stuff, but you don't see stuff like that today, I don't think,
Hmm.
like you did back in the
Yeah,
70s. I
absolutely.
mean, even when I grew up, I mean, I had friends who, when the Dead was touring over the summer, they would like travel across the country and just go to Dead show after Dead show. And
Wow.
um, yeah, that kind of stuff just, I mean, first of all, you can argue that there's no bands like that anymore, but or the ones that are there, yeah, they're just different. But
Hmm. Yeah. And some have argued that like the way groupie culture and that sort of thing is portrayed in the movie like glorifies it in a way that it shouldn't be, because it's like these girls obsessing with rock stars who can abuse
hmm
their like status to get, what they want out of them. But I personally like I think you watch the movie, and if you really pay attention to it, then you see like they don't glorify any bit or piece of the rock world. They show the
mm
good, the bad, and the ugly.
right.
Like
Oh yeah.
the multiple like drug uh I don't know if there are any overdoses aside from Penny Lane's, but like Russell definitely gets a little too deep into it, which like it's funny at the time, I am a golden god,
hmm
but like the aftermath isn't quite so pretty, which
Right.
leads into the bus scene.
Right. Well, and like you said before, this idea of the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean, and William again acting as the conscience for them all. He tells the truth. I mean,
Hmm.
and isn't that? I feel like maybe it was Philip Seymour Hoffman had a line in there somewhere
Like being
about
honest is the if you want to be friends with them, being honest is the best thing you can do, or something along those lines.
yeah. So I mean, over and over again, you see William coming and saying, like, "I'm going to be honest." I mean, he tells Penny Lane, "Hey, they sold you for, like a case of beer," and
And
because
like,
he wants people to know the truth. I
hmm,
mean,
yeah, which kind of it goes along with his whole journalism character. Like, that's what he and it's I think it's kind of a theme in the movie too, like the truth, perception versus reality, and like what is real, like going
hmm
back to the real world earlier. But also Russell, like shortly before the party starts going on about how let's see, I wrote down the quote. He says he's only interested in what's real, real people,
hmm
real feelings, etc. And this party kid comes up to him. He tries to convince Russell to come to the party, and he says, "We're just real." The thing he says that convinces him is that we're just real Topeka people.
hmm
Which so Russell goes along with him and does his whole thing. But of
yeah,
course, he eventually betrays this ideal of being real by the end of the movie when he completely denies William's story, despite every facet of it being
yeah,
written.
yeah. hmm
Hmm. And even after that, like when he calls up Penny, you can see he is still struggling with that being real, uh, despite wanting to better himself. When he says like, "I'm in a room full of people," he's completely alone in a hotel room. And then
hmm
he does correct himself. So
He
he does
does.
try to get better.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, just that reminds me too. I again, there's like you said before, there's so many brilliant lines in this movie, and when Russell pulls up to William's house in the cab, he gets out. He thinks he's at Penny Lane's house because that's who he had called. She gives him William's address, and he meets William's obsessive mother, um, and then realizes where he is. And as he and William just sit down and talk, he said, both of us wanted nothing more than to be with her, and she wanted us to be with each other. You know, um, again, I just thought that was a brilliant connection, but
Hmm.
um, you know, I think in some ways it speaks to the power of Penny Lane too, because what did she do? She those two provided different things for her, right? And so in some ways she's returning the favor by, you know, almost forcing them to have a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Penny Lane is one of the most interesting characters in the
Hmm.
movie, if not the most. Because
Yeah.
I've always felt like she was, at least for a good majority of the movie, almost the embodiment of rock and roll itself. Like
Hmm.
I think the best illustration of that was the dancing scene.
Hmm.
Like she's wild, she's free, she does what she wants, she's whatever people want her to be, which you see like in the "What age are we really" scene.
Hmm.
Like yeah, she's but at the same time she can like I don't know, she's the good, the bad, and the ugly of the industry.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and yeah, the good, bad, and the ugly of the industry from that side. You see some of that too in the, I mean, most of the tension I feel like in the band was with Jeff and um, what's his name? Russell.
Hmm.
And you know, because Jeff wanted to be the star, he wanted to be the front man, and that Russell was supposed to be the mysterious kind of side man, and and then of course that T-shirt comes out and Russell's in the front and everyone else is blurred in the background. The drummer and the bass player don't even care,
Yeah.
really. Guy's like, I'm just hungry, man. Like, and Jeff's the one who's most impacted by it because it's this constant, you know, tension there, which, hey, that's rock and roll. I mean, how many bands have, I mean, look, the Beatles in some ways broke up because of that whole tension, because
Yeah, you look
George
at
Harrison wasn't getting the recognition that he thought he
hmm
deserved. It was all Lennon McCartney. So um, yeah.
yeah, you look at Get Back and Let It Be, like the every all the tensions between them just it all builds up, and
Hmm.
eventually it leads to a breaking point, and that's exactly what happens to the band in the movie. But then I think the plane scene, I think,
Yeah,
is kind of,
it's
they
one
get
of
a
the
lot of
greatest
their,
scenes too. Yeah.
it's so good. They get a lot of the underlying tensions, I think, out of the way.
Hmm.
Making their confessions, finally all adding up to "I'm gay."
Right, right. Yeah, and
Which
then the plane,
and then of
like,
course after that it gets fine.
right. Yeah. Well, it's almost, I mean, again, that's almost a, you know, the imagery there of confession that, you know, it's such a tempestuous like ride, everything's so chaotic,
Hmm.
and then they all just bare their souls and they talk about, hey, this one slept with this one, and had an affair, and you know all this stuff, and then yeah, to finally that pinnacle point where the drummer's like, I'm gay, and then everything stops. You
Yeah.
know, it's almost like, okay, the last confession had to drop in order for there to be peace.
Mm. I never thought about that. Yeah. Like all the dirty laundry was finally aired out. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
the relationship of the band is so interesting in the movie. Like, and at the end too, when they're reading through the article Jason
Hmm.
Lee's character. He's reading what William said about him, like the exact quotes that came out of his mouth, and he says, "I sound like
Hmm.
a douche,"
Right. Oh
and
yeah.
it's just like, well, you know,
Yeah.
it's your. I mean, yeah, and it's these people don't. These people don't like to see the truth. They don't like to see what they are in the real world. They
Oh
prefer to stay in this world of rock where they can be, the gods and whatever that other people idolize.
yeah. Well, I mean, in some ways, isn't that all of us?
Oh,
In that
yeah.
we all have a there's who we think people see us as, and then there's who people really see us as, right? And so, in some ways, like um, not Russell, Jeff is kind of like going, okay, well, no, this is the way that I am, and we're like,
Mhm.
no,
Is it the
is it really that, or is that how you think you're being perceived by everybody else? Um, and yeah, that's again, that's a challenging thing, and you don't know. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen after this movie. Like, you
yeah,
know,
it's all
it,
unsure.
it's almost like who's on the cover of Madden, the video game for the year, because whoever it is going to end up getting injured the next year.
The curse. Yeah.
Now, so the curse of being on Rolling Stone is that the moment you finally make it big is the minute that your band breaks up, and that's it. Um, so yeah, and it's funny because I did you watch Daisy and the Six Days? What the heck
No,
was the name
no,
of
you did.
it?
But yeah,
Okay.
Daisy of the Six.
Because in some ways, like they're almost kissing cousins of just
Mhm.
same era of music.
Yeah, I looked at the trailers and stuff for that show. I'm like, this heavily evokes Almost Famous.
Yeah, it does. I mean, in my opinion, it doesn't even hold a candle to Almost
Mm.
Famous
I mean, what
because,
can?
yeah, it wasn't bad, but I mean, like so many other things you and I have talked about too, I just feel like it wasn't necessary either. I mean,
Hmm.
and people have said, "Oh, the book was so good," and I guess it's maybe it's a Fleetwood Mac kind of uh, almost inspired story, but yeah, I mean, yeah, let's
Let's talk
face it,
about
like,
bands breaking tensions
yeah,
in the
oh,
band. That's
yeah, yeah. Well, and let's face it, I mean, rock and roll bands are just ripe for the picking for just conflict and
hmm
infighting and ego and all this other stuff. But the funny thing is, as big of an ego as Jeff had in this, the character Jeff had in here, I just don't get the sense that Russell really had that big of an ego.
hmm
Like
Yeah.
it didn't like, did he know he was good? Sure he did. But
Yeah, he
did
knew
he
it, but he wasn't in everyone's faces about it, except for when he called himself a golden god.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
So
he wasn't, he goes up they find the shirt where he's like the only one in focus, right? And he's like,
mhm,
it's just a shirt. Like it
yeah,
doesn't matter that much. Come on, guys. Like I feel like someone else would I don't know, someone else would be more, well, I mean, I am the most talented guy here, and I know it, you know it. I'm gonna leave this band behind and
yeah. Well, and
do my own
didn't he
thing.
say stuff like that when he just was talking to um William? I feel
Yeah.
like some of
Telling
that,
secrets to the one guy you don't tell secrets to.
right. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, which that's another thing, the way he and like the other band members kind of start to open up to William,
Hmm.
I thought was interesting because I don't know, this probably was, I hope this wasn't coincidence, but I took a note of like this symbolism of his William's first time on the bus with all the band. They were all wearing sunglasses, every one of them. So, and
Huh,
they say like the eyes are what
right.
is
The
it? The
window
key,
to the
the
souls.
window to the soul. That's
Soul.
right. But then like the second appearance too, like maybe a couple of them had their sunglasses off, but finally in the Tiny Dancer scene, like Russell and Jason Lee both they finally have their don't have sunglasses on. And for me, I thought that was when they were able to finally start like really um being totally open with William
Mm,
about, themselves, who they truly were, how they felt.
yeah.
And, talking about the Tiny Dancer scene, at least I noticed two times Tiny Dancer showed up in the movie, which was
Hmm.
obviously the bus. But then they start playing the instrumental when Russell's in William's house, right? And
Yeah.
both times it's a scene where we're watching a relationship, like a broken relationship, get mended back together. Uh,
Mm.
which I thought that was interesting.
Well, the other piece of that too is, I mean, you referenced again Penny Lane's dancing scene
Hmm.
earlier. I mean, in some ways, I almost feel like Tiny Dancer was her,
She
and
is the Tiny Dancer.
it's almost, you see this in John Williams is the first one who comes to mind, where he's got like a motif for every character, right? And every time you hear like the Luke Skywalker theme or the Princess Leia theme, like you just know, like it just evokes that kind of response. And in some ways, doing the instrumental of Tiny Dancer, while it's just the two of them without words, I mean, it's almost as if it's still the three of them together, right?
Like Penny
Because
Lane's
Penny
there
Lane's
without
like
being
that,
there.
right?
Yeah.
This underlying current of her
She's
presence
the
there.
band-aid that fixes people.
Mm. Oh, that's good. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh.
I don't, I mean, seriously, I know like you've heard me go on and on about like 80s like soundtracks and stuff, but
Hmm.
if there is one person who I would, without even seeing a movie, would go and listen to a soundtrack by in a heartbeat, it would always be Cameron Crowe. I mean,
Mm.
as you look at the films that he has done and the music and how big of a role it plays in, I mean,
Hmm.
Singles was one of the first. Say Anything, okay, right? Like what Peter Gabriel's In Your Eyes was like a huge piece of that. I mean, it feels like almost every one of his movies has at least one song that just kind of stands out. And so, like Say Anything, it was In Your Eyes by Peter Gabriel. Jerry Maguire, it was Secret Garden by Bruce Springsteen. Almost Famous, it's uh, um, yeah,
Tiny
what we were
Dancer.
just talking, Tiny Dancer, Elizabethtown, if you've seen it, he uses he actually uses Freebird in a really cool way in that movie. So it's just like he's just got really, really good choice of music and stuff. And I don't know, music in a movie to me is one of those things that if it's done right, sometimes you don't even notice it. But if it's done wrong, like you really notice it, you
Yeah.
know?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So like I mean it's like so many other pieces of movie, like director of photography or costumes or whatever, like if they're doing their job well,
Hmm.
then the
Then you
music
shouldn't even.
supervisor like people will
Hmm.
just kind of take it for granted, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, you're totally right about that. Like, I think so much of the behind the scenes of the movie, or the I don't know, the filmmaking aspects of it, are done so well. And like, I don't Cameron Crowe is definitely not like a super flashy director. He's not super style. He's not like Raimi or Tarantino or even like Spielberg, but he
Mm-hmm.
he still I think he's still able to portray uh certain parts of the movie, and uh in like a really intimate personal way that
Mm-hmm.
I think allows you to connect with the characters
Oh
that
yeah.
not a lot of directors are, like, even sometimes without words or with minimal words, in a way that not many directors are able to do. Like, I thought
Yeah.
about,
Oh
as I
yeah.
realized, like, he really likes to do these really intimate close-ups where you can just tell what the exactly what's going through a character's mind in that moment.
Yeah.
Like the Penny Lane Russell like seduction scene, Act One, in which blah blah blah, Act Two,
Hmm.
whatever. Like, and you see them, you see, and you got the narration going in the background, and you can just tell exactly what's going on.
Hmm. There's a scene in Aloha. Like, it's what's funny is like even Cameron Crowe's movies that critics panned, that I still love them. I mean, and um, I really love the movie Aloha too. But there's John Krasinski's in that, and there's one scene where John Krasinski and the heck is his name? Gosh, he was in A Star Is Born too, and Russ. Nah, the heck is his name?
Not Bradley.
Yes,
Br
Brad, Silver
Shoot,
Linings Playbook too. What?
Rocket Raccoon. Shoot,
Yes,
Bradley
Bradley
Cooper.
Cooper.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So Bradley Cooper and John Krasinski have the scene together, and John Krasinski doesn't say a word, and it's just to me, it's a brilliant scene. I mean, but anyway, I just yeah, I'm really curious for you to watch some other Cameron Crowe movies because I mean, I would say that he's probably in my top five directors of all times. I mean, along with people like Paul Thomas Anderson, Wes Anderson, and Spielberg. Um, yeah, just I think he's brilliant, and I think what you said before, in some ways, what they talk about as far as being real in this film,
Hmm.
I think that's it's like what they used to say about Seinfeld, right? Like this is a show about nothing,
Yeah.
right? Um, that in some ways that's what he does. He takes these ordinary characters and makes them well, it's a hero's journey, like you said
Hmm.
before, like an ordinary character and does something extraordinary with
Yeah.
them. And yeah, Elizabethtown too. I just yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and you say that like he takes an ordinary character and does something extraordinary, but I feel like in Almost Famous, he almost like deconstructs extraordinary characters and makes them
Hmm.
shows us that they're ordinary. Like Penny
That's good.
Lane,
Yeah.
by the end, like, like I said, she's almost representative of the spirit of rock and roll itself.
Hmm.
And then, but by the end, like William finally discovers her real name. Uh, he's saved her life. She's gone through this uh this this drug overdose in a very grueling, just not pleasant to witness scene where she has to purge her stomach, and
Yeah.
it's a whole thing. And we realize like her, Russell, Jason Lee, all these people, they're people. They're not,
Hmm.
the
Right.
idols that uh someone like William had built them up to be.
Yeah. No, that's really yeah. You say that, and I'm like, oh, Say Anything needs to be like one of the first movies you watch, because that's yeah, it's taking the ordinary kind of dorky outcast guy and putting him together with the most popular girl in school. And yeah, there's a deconstruction that happens there too because of what ends up happening with her world in that film and his world. So yeah, there's something to explore there. I think a lot in just how he has taken these. It's almost the reverse of what you see happen often, right? Where
Hmm.
instead of the elevation of it, it's the unpacking, it's the undressing in some ways of these characters that everyone else has built up to be
Yeah.
something significant. So.
Yeah, which is kind of what you have to do. Like I think in the movie, Cameron Crowe follows the hero's journey almost to a T, but he does, he works within it to do this deconstruction, I guess,
Hmm.
with like how William feels and all these how he looks at all these characters and everything. And
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's always very interesting when a movie's able to, I guess, subvert expectations in a
Yeah.
good way like that.
Anything stand out to you as far as like what you think was unnecessary? I mean, like any scenes in
Hmm.
particular that you're like, you know,
I
that
could
probably
could have
wasn't
been there,
as,
could have done without
yeah.
it. I'm trying to think. I feel like you're gonna say something and I'm gonna be like, "Oh, yeah, sure." But I mean, nothing's springing to mind. Like I think everything they did, I think every line was so meticulously written as to have
Hmm.
some purpose or another.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I think this was a necessary scene, but I was just thinking about when Russell gets shocked by the
Hmm.
microphone, and you see the Australian manager guy. Uh,
Hmm.
he's like fighting for literally fighting for the band.
Yes.
He's
Yes.
like he's kicking ass,
Yeah.
taking names, and which like you later when you get the other manager guy, Jimmy Fallon, he's
Hmm.
like the first sign of danger, he says, I quit. He's done.
Hmm.
He will not fight for the band in the way that, this other
Hmm.
guy will, which I mean,
Yeah.
and Jimmy Fallon's character too, that's a whole thing. But yeah, do you have anything that you consider?
No, but it's funny that you brought up Jimmy Fallon because if there's like I just when they introduced him in, and I mean, I I love Jimmy Fallon and his show, and I think some of the like the what's it called impressions that he does of people are great. Like he's been in a couple. Well, so Fever Pitch he was in, and I love
Mhm.
that movie because I'm a Red Sox fan. But um, he was in Band of Brothers. Um,
Really?
yes, and it was like a really weird. It was a weird
Yeah, because I
scene,
feel like
and I'm kind of
like
like,
today, where we tie him so closely to being just,
oh,
the comedian, the Tonight Show
right,
guy, that like, I mean, for me, and I'm sure for many others, like seeing him in as an actor, as a character, in literally anything, it's almost a jump scare. We're like,
right,
oh, Jimmy
right,
Fallon, what's he doing
yeah.
here?
Yeah, so I almost felt like he was expendable in some
Hmm.
ways. That I mean, I'm like you get why it was introduced, like the fact that hey, it's a record company, they're trying to expand
Hmm.
here and stuff, but he just I don't know. I mean, sorry, Jimmy, but you're never going to be Adam Sandler. I mean,
Hmm.
Adam Sandler has somehow or another, when you can do Happy Gilmore and Uncut Gems and be like believable in both of them, then that you take something to a new level there. And
Oh, for sure.
I don't know that Fallon has the chops to be able to do
Mm,
that.
yeah.
So, but yeah, I
I
didn't have
He
anything
does
in
good with what
mind.
he has.
He does. But like you said, like sometimes, I mean, it's like running into one of your teachers, right, in the grocery store, and you're like, wait a minute,
It's like
this
you're
is a
not
fish
supposed
out
to
of
be
water.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost the same thing with him, where like a series like Band of Brothers, which is a pretty heavy
Very
duty
serious.
thing, and you've got him on it. I mean, David Schwimmer from Friends is in it too. So I mean, if that
Mm.
tells you anything, but. Um, yeah, I don't know. How about the other thing I was wondering is like, is there anything that, you talked about the extended edition having a little bit more breathability with certain scenes. Is
Mhm.
there anything that you wish you knew more of or they had spent more time like unpacking?
Mm. See, nothing springs to mind. Like, I guess I would say like maybe a little more focus on William's mom, but I
Hmm.
do think they do a good job with that in both cuts. Really, there
Yeah.
was this one shot that stood out to me. Really, it was really good. It was a wide, I think it was, yeah, it was a wide shot of her in her house after hanging up on a phone. Her William hangs up on a phone call, I think, and she's just like in the dark alone,
Hmm.
and it
Hmm.
just in that in a second, it just illustrates how how lonely she feels.
Right. Yeah.
And and it's funny sometimes, like rock stars have kidnapped my son,
Oh
but
yeah. Yeah.
like
That's
you get
I thought that was a brilliant scene in the
abs
classroom.
it totally is.
Yeah.
But like you really get down to it, and it's kind of sad, like both of her kids are just, they've run away from her.
Yeah, yeah,
But
and yeah, she's almost driven them away in some
yeah,
ways. So yeah.
I was thinking about Jimmy Fallon too, like his character is part of the kind of the representation of the band losing its soul over the
Hmm.
course of the movie. Like
Yeah.
between that and then you have the symbol of the plane, like because one of them says the bus. I don't remember what the bus is named, but they have a name for the bus, and they say she's the soul of the they literally say she's the soul of the band, and they
Hmm.
leave the soul of the band behind as they go to the
Mm.
plane. There's another great shot
Oh,
where
wow.
William's
Yeah.
walking away and the bus is just getting further and further smaller in the frame, and they're going to the plane and leaving their soul behind. And then of
Yeah.
course at the very end, if you look at the hero's journey, I guess this would be the resurrection stage.
Hmm.
They're back in the bus, and the band's they got their soul back.
Yeah. Well, and anyone who's followed rock and roll for any length of time knows that airplanes and bands don't mix. I mean, starting from Buddy Holly and the Big Bopper
Mm,
and, Richie Valens, all the way to
Leonard Skinner.
Leonard Skinner and Randy Rhoads, who played for Ozzy. Just, yeah, John Denver. How many different plane crashes that have claimed the lives of musicians, rock and roll musicians. So yeah, ironic in that too. So no, that's good. I hadn't even thought about that before, but yeah, I can picture that scene in my mind of them walking away with the bus kind of abandoned, and then don't they? Like you said at the end of the movie, isn't the
Like no more
marquee
the
on
no
the
more the
bus?
no more planes tour. Yeah, that
Yes, I
always makes me
mean,
laugh.
yeah, totally. That's such a great, yeah, again,
I know there's such
the
good
attention
humor.
to detail, right? Stuff like
Hmm.
that. That's,
Like it sets
yeah.
Cameron Crowe apart, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Like I think he does have a style. I think he's very understated in a way, but like
Hmm.
it's his style's deceptively simple, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's the everyman kind of thing too,
Hmm.
right? Like, I mean, Cameron Crowe to directors to me is like Rick Rubin is to producers of music, right? Like I just read Rick Rubin's book just a few months ago, and um, it, to me, it's like you've got he's someone you'd like to sit down and like hang out with in your living and go like let's just chill and talk. And he brings that kind of casualness into his films, and it invites you in, not in a voyeuristic way, but in almost a like cordial, congenial kind of way,
Hmm. Yeah, he ma- it's Almost Famous is a very comfy movie. Like it's the as the kids would say, I guess the vibes are very good.
He's
It's
vibing.
almost
Yeah.
like, they use it, it's almost like American Graffiti, I think. Like just a lot, it's very atmospheric, very
Hmm.
just it's almost a window into the time period in which it's based,
Yeah.
and it perfectly captures just the atmosphere that they're going for.
Yeah. Tonal. Yeah.
But yeah, we've been going for a while. I think we've made some
Yeah.
pretty
Exhausted it.
good points.
Yeah.
I'm sure we could, if we really tried, we could talk about this for hours upon hours on end because there is so much to unpack with this
Oh,
movie.
yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, I want to hear your thoughts on some of his other stuff too. So, you mentioned Vanilla Sky. That was actually, who the original movie, like that's a remake. Did you know Vanilla
I
Sky's
did
a
not
remake?
know that was a remake. No.
Yeah. So, the original was called Abre los Ojos, or Open
Ooh.
Your Eyes. And Penelope Cruz was in that too. Oh gosh, I have to look it up quick to see who. Um, one of those. I feel like it was Alfonso
Cuarón? No, he was
Cuarón.
later.
No, no, no.
Was he
I think
later?
um.
Abre los ojos, directed by Alejandro
Oh,
Amenabar.
okay. Amenabar. That's who it was. Sorry. I'm probably not very good at the fact that I can't always. Anyway, I just to 6 degrees of separation. Can't.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's
Cool.
yep, almost famous, very, very well directed, well acted,
Yeah.
immaculately chosen soundtrack.
Mhm.
Uh, even the Alvin and the Chipmunks at the beginning.
Yes, and if you haven't seen it, go see it. And if you
Hmm.
see it and you don't like it, then
See it
you
again.
better go see a doctor or something because
Right.
there's
Like I
something
don't
wrong with you.
there are certain movies like if you don't like them, I don't trust you. This is one of those like
Star
almost
Wars,
famous
almost
Star
famous.
Wars, Back to the Future, Lord of the
Come on.
Rings. If you
Yes,
don't like
Indiana
them,
Jones. Yeah,
Indiana
yeah.
Jones, at least Raiders. Like
Yes,
if you don't like it, I don't I'm gonna be a little wary around you, you know? Like
absolutely.
I might not trust
Absolutely.
you with a sharp object.
Yes. Yes. Good stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being here. I'm glad we
Yeah,
were able to
thanks
do
for
this.
having me. Yep, me
Yeah.
too.
And you got some experience with podcasts yourself, you know?
I
Like
do.
it's been a minute, but
It
you
has been
used
a
to
minute. Yeah,
at the very least you used to upload to Between the Frames, also
that's
available on
right.
Spotify, correct? Yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And hopefully one day we'll get back to it again, but when my buddy Joel gets a little freer. So, yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, unfortunate my brother was not able to join
Yeah,
the
I think he
discussion a little
probably
more.
needs to do one without me. I think
Probably. I think
he,
he was a little intimidated, but it
yeah,
is what it is.
it is. Yep.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks
Thanks.
again.
Thanks, Dylan. Thanks for
Yeah,
having
thank
me.
you.
Alrighty.
Bye.
Bye.